Would you agree to marry someone without knowing their name? Hello, everyone, and welcome to Love Unexpected, a true story that will take you on a romantic journey that I promise will make you smile, sigh, and believe in the power of love. I'm your host, Tom Howie. This amazing story follows a young woman named Dawn Lawson, who had the experience of a lifetime as she traveled through Poland and Ukraine in 1992, shortly after they had become free from communist control. Her adventure is filled with unexpected turns, twists, and revelations sure to capture your heart and imagination. So let's dive into the story of how she found love that she never expected from across the sea. Thank you for joining us. Off we go. So, Dawn, you and the team now were in the town of Berdyshev. Is that how I say that?
Berdyshev, yes.
Okay, doing the best I can. So that's about 3 hours away from Kiev, and the people in the town seem to really enjoy the 80s TV show Dynasty.
Yes.
Okay, so much so, it seems, that you have to be finished with your ministry before the show goes on at 7 o'clock every night.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their view of Americans.
Yes.
Wow. So you have had a conversation with a couple of ladies on the team who said they've been praying for a wife for Willy.
Mm-hmm.
They also seem to be helping you finally accept that Willy may be the one is to be your husband.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pick the story up there.
Okay. Well, yes, speaking with these ladies really seemed to calm my fears about moving forward in a relationship with Willy. And so when the rain finally stopped that day, all of the women joined the men in the outdoor stage. And the dancers walked through the dance on the stage. The stage was not your normal outdoor stage. It was wooden floorboards that were warped, and the entire stage slanted downwards towards the front. So it was like if you stopped, dropped, and rolled, you'd roll on off the front of the stage. And we were all laughing, and we tried to catch our balance. It was all so uneven. Well, ultimately, we just prayed and asked God to protect us from getting hurt, and we gave the dance over to Him. Thankfully, the dance went well, and then after the program, we prayed for everyone who wanted prayer. We gave them Bibles that were printed in Russian, but we also gave them American souvenirs like small flags and buttons, postcards, pens, and things like that. Because again, people in this town didn't have any personal contact with Americans.
If only you'd had signed copies of the cast from Dynasty that you could have given 8x10s. Well, did you finish the show before Dynasty came on?
Yeah, we did. We all climbed on the bus early in the evening, and just as the sun was beginning to set, we stopped to see a historic church that had been bombed in World War II. And there were partial walls, and there were boards kind of covering up windows and stuff that had been not replaced yet. There were still bullet holes, but as a stark contrast, when you went inside, it just seemed to glow with these ancient frescoes on the walls and the ceilings, and they were like gold icons, and there's just this holy hush in the room. So our team took the opportunity, and they began to spontaneously sing, I think it was Alleluia, and a nun was there, and she led the team after they finished singing on a tour of the church there. And so, of course, I started to follow the crowd, but Willy, he pulled my hand. He said, we don't need to see another church. And I said, I don't get to see things like this back in the States, but he gripped my hand tighter, and he led me outside. He took me up on the hill, close to a wall that was surrounding the church that had been kind of crumbling and fallen down. And from there, we could kind of see the buildings outlined in the last rays of the sun. It was really beautiful. And then, as it was getting dark, he just whispered to me, "Kohemcha." And he pulled me into his arms, and he kissed me for the first time. And I didn't know what he'd said, but I'll tell you, that sweet, passionate kiss just lit a fire inside of me.
So what you're saying is what they told the guys last week, I guess, when they were still in Poland. Men, you need to light the women's fires. Finally, this guy did it. That's awesome. It's incredible. So since then, have you found out what the phrase actually means?
Yes. Kohemcha is Polish for I love you.
Oh, well, that was very appropriate. And wait, He had just given you a note that said, I like you. So now he's I love you. And how many days is this?
This was, let me see, I like you was on Saturday. The kiss was on Tuesday. So, of course, my head is swirling, and everyone came out from the church, and it was dark. We all boarded the bus for our 3-hour ride back to the hotel. And, of course, Willie and I sat together, and I was still rather drunk from this kiss of his. Once we drove out of town, the bus became pitch black inside because there were no streetlights along the road and there were very few cars. And about an hour into the ride, all of our talking died down, and I think people probably began to fall asleep. And then Willie put his arm around me, and I just rested my head on his shoulder, and the warmth of his body and the intoxicating fragrance of his cologne just melted me. And then he began to kiss me, and I just felt like blissfully lost in him. Tom, I had no doubt that I was fully attracted to him now.
All right, so now we know how Willie feels about you. Mm-hmm. We're up to Wednesday, May 27th, 1992, which is your 29th birthday. Now, I'm not going to do the math. We don't care how old you are now, but someone out there is going to figure out the math. You're in Eastern Europe on a missions trip, and you've just met your husband. What a birthday gift.
Yes, it was the best birthday. That morning, Willie met me at my room, and he was holding a red carnation and a birthday card. And inside the card, he'd written, I love you, in English this time.
In English. Okay,
yes.
So 5 days earlier, he wrote, I like you. I got to tell you, this guy moves fast.
Yes, he did. I guess he had to. With less than a week left, we had just a few days to get this thing moving. As we walked to the dining room for breakfast, all the men stood up and moved into 2 lines, and then they kissed my hands as I walked past them.
Similar to when they kissed Jennifer on the cheek for her birthday?
Yes. I just got it on the hands, though. I didn't get it on the cheek. And no one gave me a bouquet. Like Willie had given the bouquet to Jennifer.
Well, but at least you got the carnation.
That's true.
Okay.
Yes. And it was a sweet gesture that these guys did. And after we finished breakfast, the team bus took us all to a part of Kiev where people were selling paintings and trinkets and souvenirs and food in this plaza. And we all wandered around, and we were shopping and looking at everything. Then late that morning, the team did some street ministry, and Olga and Natasha joined us in the circle dances, which was really fun. They sure enjoyed that. Tom, this was our last day in Kiev, and I had the opportunity to see Willie's caring heart. He decided that these Russian girls shouldn't take the long train rides back to their home cities. So Willie found a travel agency, and he bought airline tickets for both of them to fly home. And after that, he took me out on our first date. And I felt exceedingly happy because we'd always just been with the team until now.
So wait, you've just met 10 days before. You have only 3 days before you fly home. And today, on your birthday, you have your very first date with Willie.
Yes. It sounds a little backwards to how things usually go. And I found out that he was going to be my husband before we even had a date. I mean, before we held hands or even kissed. For our date, Willie took me out to lunch at that same elegant restaurant on Krashadik that we'd visited Sunday with Olga and Trish when we had to bribe or tip the waitress beforehand.
Did they remember you this time?
This was a different person.
Oh,
so,
no.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as we dined, of course, we had several delicious courses again, and we had to have a very open talk. And I asked him if he wanted more children, and he responded, that would be nice. Huh. And I told him that I definitely wanted more children and that my parents were so eager for grandchildren. Okay, let me tell you, Tom, this is, when I say eager, this is how eager my parents wanted grandchildren. The first gift they gave me when I turned 21 was a Winnie the Pooh crib toy. I mean, I love Pooh Bear, but I thought, a crib toy? Pretty suggestive. And then through the years after that, they gave me children's book collections and other items for their future grandchildren every time we had Christmas or my birthday. And so Willie asked me how many children I wanted, and I told him I wanted 2 boys and 2 girls so that each child could have a brother and a sister. And we also talked about him coming to Tennessee to meet my family, and then we would plan our wedding once he got there. And I still plan to move to Warsaw with him after we were married in Tennessee and hopefully teach at that American school that his daughter attended. So we decided that when we got back to Warsaw, we'd go to the American consulate and he would apply for a visitor's visa. And we hoped that he could come maybe that summer or that fall.
Okay, so here I am counting again. You've seen 2 of the 3 parts of the prophecy happen in less than 2 weeks. Now you're talking about planning a wedding. Did you think a wedding was going to happen that year as well?
Well, we thought that we would get married either later that year or the next year. So after we talked about that, as we were finishing our desserts, I asked him, and when we get married, what will my last name be? Like Tom?
Okay, maybe things you find out when you first meet someone. I don't know.
Tom, I had to say, I didn't know him as anyone but Willie. I didn't know his last name. I mean, his last name was Pruszkowski.
Wait, what? Say that again?
Well, he told me his last name was Pruszkowski, and I tried to repeat it several times, and I still couldn't say it correctly. It's a pretty tough one. It's got 11 letters. I thought that if I saw how it was spelled, it would help me. So he had me take out the program with our names on it, because on the back of the program, it had all of the people in it. And the name Willie wasn't there, but his brother Richard's name was there. And that's when I was able to see it and actually count 11 letters in the last name. But a lot of letters that we don't usually put together in the English language were combined, and so it didn't help me to see it spelled.
It is interesting when you go to Eastern Europe, you can see so many consonants and like, where is a vowel? Just, can I buy a vowel?
Yeah, it just confuses me even more when I see it. Then I asked him, like, since we're getting married, what's your first name? Because I know it's not Willie. I've heard your brother call you something else.
So trust me, I'm just picturing this scene in a restaurant. Does he reach across the table and say, hi, my name is?
No.
Will you marry me? Hi, my name is?
No, he didn't do that. So his name was not Willie. I have to say that, I was getting engaged and I didn't know the guy's name. And I asked him, how did you come up with the name Willie? And he said, well, an American music producer friend of his gave him the nickname Willie because it was easier to say than his real name. So from then on, he introduced himself as Willie to any Americans he met. So that's how I agreed to marry a man without knowing his name.
Okay, now I'm curious. What is his real name?
His real name is Wiesław. And I tried to repeat that several times. He had to correct me every time. And then he said that everyone just called him Wieszek. It was like an informal way of saying Wiesław. It's kind of like Tom for Thomas. He had signed the birthday card that he'd given me that morning with this name, Wieszek, but I didn't know how to read it, how to pronounce it. It looks like, Wieszek.
So if you're looking at it written for all of our American audience out there, the W in Polish is pronounced like a V. So that does make sense that it would be Willy and not Willy.
Okay, so later that day, I thought about when I was in high school and would doodle my name with my boyfriend's names, like, Mrs. Fill in the blank. I never thought I would be doing something like writing Mrs. Wiesław Pruszkowski.
I'd give anything to be able to get odds on that name when you were in junior high school. That would be brilliant. All right, so you've now agreed to marry a man before you even knew his name, but now on your last night in Kiev, you found out his name is not Willie.
Yes. And I still couldn't say his name correctly. In fact, he later told me that I was calling him a coat hanger in Polish.
So I don't want to call him a coat hanger too. May we just abbreviate to V?
That's perfectly fine. It was our last night in Kiev, and the team ministered our program at a Messianic Jewish church. And Trish and I finally got to do our duet that I'd taught her. Richard, who is V's brother, translated the lyrics so that the congregation heard them in Russian, and then we told the message through dance. And I'll tell you, the message of that song really spoke to me that night because it spoke to what I'd been going through on that trip. It said that, when we're going through difficult times or when things just seem to not make sense, God will pick you up, he'll hold you, and he'll see you through. He'll find a way. And that's kind of what it seemed like was going on with Vishik and me, or Willy and me. It seemed like there was no way for this relationship to happen, but he found a way. Back at the hotel, we ate dinner, and then Willy and I slipped away to the upstairs lobby to talk. But young love, we began to cuddle, which led to kissing.
I think we need to leave it right there and move on to the next day, which would be May 28th. But I do have one very important question, because one day I'm going to go to Poland, and I want to know how to order a coat hanger. So if Wieszek is how you really pronounce his name, what were you saying?
I have no idea what I was saying.
Okay, all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I provide a service. If you needed a coat hanger at the front desk, I can't help you. She forgot how you pronounced it.
I was going to say, I tried to avoid, after he told me that, calling him by his first name at all. I just call him Honey.
Okay. Oh, well, that works out well. Anyway, you're flying back to Warsaw. The interesting thing to me is I remember from season 1 how Poland was basically just going to be a stop on the way until you got to Ukraine. And now we're going back to Poland with a guy that you didn't even know his name. You were trying desperately to avoid him for a week, and now you're going back to Poland as his fiancé.
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
Yes.
Before we left our hotel to fly to Warsaw, Steve and Wieszek talked to the team about taking up an offering to bless Olga and Natasha. The financial situation in Russia wasn't great either, and they'd spent so much money to take the train and join us. So after breakfast that morning, Natasha expressed to the team how much joy she and Olga had felt that week and how grateful they were. And then Olga thanked us through the language of dance. She had brought her point shoes, and she had a piece of music put on, and she said that this dance was about a girl who received spiritual sight and realizes that God uses her weakness for his goodwill. It was just beautiful. And then everyone on the team, I tell you, we were in tears. The girls had blessed us, so we just blessed them. We gave them each an envelope full of money, and they were completely overwhelmed. They were able to go to the airport with us, and we had a tearful goodbye there with both Natasha and Olga.
Okay, that's right. I've already forgotten. Willy bought them tickets back to their hometowns on an airline rather than them taking the long train ride. So that meant Olga was flying back to Moscow and to Natasha to Kazan.
Yes. And we all got on our rickety Aeroflot planes. And we were waiting to take off.
I've got to put a plug in. They're now flying Boeing airplanes in Europe, so
okay.
At least Eastern Europe, so we're good.
Okay, we're safe now. I was going to say, those airplanes well.
Oh, no, I don't know the ones they were having at the time, and I probably would not have stepped on them myself.
Okay, well, this one particular flight was one like I'd never experienced. When it was our turn to take off, that plane shook. It rumbled like it was just like the panels were going to fall off and everything fall apart. We started taxiing down the runway, but the plane didn't go up. It just kept taxiing. Then someone in our team yelled out, "We're not going up!" And we continued to shake and bump as if we're just going to roll over a dirt road and keep on driving down, all our way to Warsaw. And then someone yelled out again, "We're not going up!" At least that, kind of made us all laugh and not be so worried. I could see through the window, because I had a window seat, that the runway was coming to an end. And the fence was just past the runway. And so, of course, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. And that person shouted out, "We're still not going up." Thank goodness at the last possible moment, like the end of the runway, the nose lifted and we just barely cleared that fence. And this flight held a few more surprises for me before we landed.
Well, I'm not going to give much of my past before I was at Southwest, but I think I've flown flights where you really hoped the plane would leave the runway. Well, that wraps up this episode of Love Unexpected. To see photos and video clips that go along with this story, go to our website, loveunexpected.us. You can find the link in our episode guide. We would love to hear from you, so email your comments and questions at our website. If you enjoyed the show, we would love for you to share our podcast with your family and friends. You can listen to Love Unexpected on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Be sure to hit the subscribe and notification buttons so that you don't miss a single episode of our show. You can help us by leaving a rating as well as a comment or review. We look forward to connecting with you on social media. Our username @LoveUnexpectedPodcast on both Instagram and Facebook. Our producer and creator of original music for the show is Joe EP Music. Our host, Tom Howey. Our writer is Dawn Prushkovsky. Our media manager is Jean Prushkovsky.